Welcome everybody to Unchurned. I'm Josh Schachter, founder and CEO of UpdateAI and host of Unchurned. Joining me today, I'm very excited to have Chief Growth and Community Officer at Go-to-Market at GTM Partners, Mr. Judd Borkaove. Judd, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So tell us, I don't want to botch your intro here. We've had several conversations, and I don't want to botch your background. Tell us a little bit about both yourself and what GTM Partners is all about.
Sure. So I spent a lot of time all across go-to-market, and I'll explain go-to-market in a minute, but sales, marketing, customer success, started some companies, sold some, failed at some, learned a lot of lessons, and most recently partnered up with a couple of very smart people, probably smarter than me, Sangram Vadra, who was the CMO over at Pardot for a number of years, Salesforce, and then started a company called Terminus. Brian Brown, who was the chief strategy officer at Silverpop for a number of years, and then Terminus. And basically we came together realizing that right now, people really struggle with what go-to-market is and how to execute. There's been lots of funnels and things like that over the years, but they don't take into account some of the newer metrics that we're really supposed to track, such as NRR, GRR, things like that. And, there's been a massive emergence in the need for more focus on customer time to value and expansion motions within business. So we're out there doing research, working with people hands-on to kind of help solve these problems.
Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation because our audience does consist of a lot of people in customer success, as you know, a lot of people in go-to-market within SaaS organizations. So it's very, very appropriate for this discussion we're going to have. Also, I think you're winning by virtue of your teaming up with you claim people smarter than yourselves. That's the first rule in a successful business: is always find people smarter than yourself to join your team. So well done on that initial start. There's lots of folks that give advice in marketing and sales and go-to-market. What's your qualification, for the organization you run?
As far as like what we do or why anyone should listen to us?
Yes. Why should we listen to you?
One, we have access to data and research that nobody else does. So we have a partnership with G2, a number of other data providers that allow us to see things that nobody else can get. People say, oh, we buy their data. It's different. So we do that. We do our own individualized research. We have been in and been successful at multiple businesses. We've seen it. We've worked with VCs. We've done a lot of different things and had a lot of success. So, I don't choose who, you don't have to listen to us for sure, but we are definitely trying to disrupt what people think about analysts and how they function. Analyst research these days, not as many people listen to or look at unless you're really big enterprise. And we think that needs to change. So hopefully people will see what we're doing and catch on. The events we've been doing. We do these road shows have been wildly successful. And so we're trying to just build upon that.
So when you talk about the traditional analysts, you're talking about the folks like the Forresters, the Gartners, the monitors of the world.
Exactly. Where look, they definitely have a purpose. People need them. We actually help people to better utilize their services in some instances. So nobody's saying like, oh, they're the worst thing in the world. I just think that some of the things they do these days are a bit antiquated and don't quite fit for the need of fast-growing tech firms and the likes.
So if I'm reading it correctly, you're providing analysis as well, like they are, but it's maybe a little bit more focused on your individual client's needs with maybe a little bit more hands-on insight and actionability. Is that the right read on it?
It is definitely part of it. The insights also, we have different market trends and things that we can track that even they don't. For them, most of the time they're talking to individuals. They're doing, a 300 plus person analysis, which, 301 is considered statistically relevant. We're trying to get tens of thousands of data points that can help people better understand the future, what's coming, not what's happened in the past.
I see. Great. We'd like to start the show off with going unchurned, right? In homage to our name, which is an homage to the SaaS metric of churn and retention. So I want to do some rapid fire questioning here with you, Judd. Cool. First question, who's your favorite Judd? And I have three options for you here. So there's Judd Apatow, who, famous comic writer, produced a lot of movies with Will Ferrell and others. there's Ashley Judd, and then there's Judd Hirsch. Do you know Judd Hirsch?
Very well. You missed Judd Rose too, but I'm going to go with Judd Hirsch. Just seeing his stuff.
Yes.
Love Apatow. Nothing wrong with him. Don't consider Ashley a Judd. Just saying.
And I was hoping you'd guess Judd Hirsch. You'd say Judd Hirsch. I figured not many would. Taxi is actually one of my favorite shows of all time.
Haven't seen it in forever and still remember it to this day.
And in researching for this interview, I looked up Judd Hirsch. He's 87 years old. I didn't realize time flies. Can you imagine?
Now I feel real old too.
Yeah, right. Myself included. There's different types of go-to-market plays, right? This is something that I'm currently thinking through. I've been thinking through for months and months and months with UpdateAI. Is what is our play? Can you juggle multiple types of plays at the same time for go-to-market? What are some of the most common plays that are out there in terms of different go-to-market strategies?
I mean, you have the standards like outbound, inbound. You have community-led. You have ecosystem-led, which is primarily partnerships. We could also think of that as like Salesforce builds a platform for other developers to create, right? There's a lot of go-to-market motions, and more are getting created all the time. I mean, nobody ever would have said community-led was something they ever focused on, and now it's big. You've got category-led, right? Category creation has been a buzz for the last 5 years or so. So different motions. And to your comment about can you run multiple at the same time? All the best companies do, but that does not mean that's how you start. So if you think about technologies that maybe sell to developers, right? You want a top-down and bottom-up approach. So you're going to have two different things. You might have a PLG approach to get users to use your product, and you may have an outbound, maybe ABM-focused approach to talk to the executives and be able to find ways to get more people into the buying process.
So let me run this by you. Where should I start? Where should UpdateAI start? Now, I have a hypothesis, and we have a starting point that we are starting at. But before I share that, because it is something that we've really been thinking about, and I've spoken to a lot of advisors about over the past several months. So our product, right? We are there inside of Zoom video conferences. We've built proprietary technology that detects action items and follow-ups through AI in your calls, in your customer calls, and then spits them out to you on a silver platter, right after your call. Hey, great call. Here's a recap. Here's the action items that we overheard. You can put them into Salesforce. You can put them into Notion or your task tool or whatever it is, and go from there. That could very easily be a PLG, a product-led growth play, yep. Right? Where each individual just has their personal assistant for their meetings. That being said, I don't necessarily know that I want to endeavor into a PLG domain, because I would really like to become a quote unquote variation of a Gong, right? Where it's direct sales and you're signing up contracts and it's larger ACVs, and you're not dealing with, the grassroots level churn and operational complexity and cost of acquisition of individual users. Like, we can talk more about mine, or we can move on to a different topic, but any thoughts from your perspective based on what I just shared?
Well, a lot of the motions are determined by your contract value. A higher contract value could determine, hey, ABM makes sense, right? Outbound tends to have a pretty high cost, right? Because you need salespeople, you need marketing to help drive. Not always. Sometimes you can go just direct sales. Inbound, you're going to spend on PPC, all the ads and things like that, SEO. PLG, kind of similar. I mean, you've got to get people to the product, but if you get it in their hands, then you're focused on conversion. Like, basically, you've got to get not just activation, but then conversion to pay. So you have to think about how you gate it to create that. So there's a couple ways to go, but I will say this: just because you start with one does not mean that's where you need to stay. So, for example, let's say you start with PLG because it makes the most sense because your head count is low, right? I don't know how many people you have on your team, but maybe that's an easier thing to do. As you expand the product, your PLG motion can get it into hands that create multiple go-to-market motions. So you may not ever stop a PLG motion. You use it to create more throughput while you're then going after larger deals because you've expanded to more of a platform opportunity that supports more of an enterprise sale.
The one thing we haven't talked about is I view PLG motion as a way to increase the velocity of my product learnings. Mm-hmm. That if I can bring more people into the platform early on, then I accelerate my learnings about my product and my roadmap, and my product gets better and better and better. At a certain point, you hit the threshold where then you feel really good about going after larger enterprises, right? Because you've had a certain level of product maturity.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. There's a lot of positives to each type of go-to-market. You just have to understand what makes sense, because not every product could even be turned into a PLG product. But yet right now we hear it, everybody's like, marketing is hearing constantly, hey, create a PLG motion. I'm like, I got an enterprise product. What am I going to do? Like, I have to ingest data. I have to, that's not possible. So, people get kind of happy feet, we'll say, with the new motions and like, how do we do it too? Not every product can, and that's okay. Getting really hyper-focused on your ICP might be more important than creating another go-to-market motion.
And by the way, you hear it a lot. You hear about PLG all the time from venture capitalists. You go to these conferences and it's all PLG, PLG, PLG. The multipliers are far and above anything else that you see out there. It makes sense to be successful in PLG. You have to be providing really good value, true value at the atomic level to each individual end user. And it makes sense for a VC to go in there and say, I want you to prove that out, because I know if you prove the atomic value out to the atomic user, then you're going to be able to grow this thing. And it almost feels to me like it's a way for them to vet companies earlier up front, let them either really prosper or fail fast. I don't know if that's anything that's ever kind of crossed your mind.
One of the things that I'll say with PLG is you get a lot of user data, conversion data, things that you can look at, even outside of having to go into the company to better understand things. So I think that one of the reasons they like it is the data that is created through the motion itself. It's easier just to rely on and believe data that comes from product usage than, say, things that are input from a sales rep, right? Yeah. Or data that you're seeing that is bad data from marketing campaigns or whatever, conversion metrics. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's some definite things there that definitely make VCs excited about it. Also, the cost. Honestly, even with the cost to get it to a certain point, that might be a little higher up front, it tails off. If I'm in an enterprise motion, sales reps are not cheap, right? The overhead associated with onboarding them, ramping them, all of their costs associated from technology and so on, it can be pretty expensive. It eats into your margins. So you see bigger multipliers probably because of that.
Yeah, when it's done right at scale. That makes sense. You guys have a framework called the 8 pillars of the go-to-market operating system. Let's talk a little bit through that framework and kind of go through each of the pillars, if you don't mind. And I'll put this up here so you can look at it with me.
Got it.
You got it embedded there, huh?
Yeah, no, it is a pretty cool way to think about things. Pretty obvious, but we kind of look at this as if anyone is familiar with Serious Decisions or Topo, they created different models. The demand waterfall was created, and it made a lot of sense. So that's why people bought into it. This is something that makes a lot of sense. We think this is the evolution of that. So some of the areas that have been added are those customer time to value and expansion. We've also included RevOps, and we talk a lot about leadership and management as a pillar, and that's the people and things like that. But if I take you through it, your first piece, and it does not have to be done in order. This is the thing that people don't always get. You can jump in at any point because no matter what motion you're running, these are always there, just in different varying levels. So first, we call it total relevant market. So a lot of people talk about total addressable market. We talk about a relevant market, those potential buyers who are in market and can buy your product or offering. So when people go, our TAM is every B2B company between this and this, I mean, like, really? Are they really? Probably not. So we like to get a little bit closer to the truth and say, we need to look at the relevant market. So who do I sell to?
Is that different at all? I'm dated in my acronyms. It's been a few years, but is that different than SOM and SAM at all? Or is that just a different twist on the same thing?
A little bit different. But, and look, we coined some terminology here too that isn't the standard because some of this stuff just doesn't exist. We talk about Next as our market investment map. And this isn't like a standard term. But the way we look at it is there's got to be a way to understand, where do we make investments? Where do we make bets? What go-to-market motions should we invest in? What geos should we invest in? What product should we expand to? We find that a lot of times companies will acquire a company because they think they have a tangential or an expansion opportunity with their offering. And then they go in to realize that it's not even the same buyer, economic or otherwise. And suddenly now you're throwing two different motions, selling two things that don't cross over. So there's no way to expand upon it. You need to look at these things in advance. Like, what should we invest in? That leads you to your standard brand and demand. And brand and demand, people think, oh, it's brand and demand. Well, yes, but there's a lot to it. If I think that I'm going to go ABM, I have to look at the cost associated. Can we afford to go after go in this motion, and how are we going to do that? And sometimes,
Judd, just for folks that maybe don't have much background in GTM, what ABM? What does it stand for? What is it?
Account-based marketing. So been around probably about 80 plus years or so. My co-founder Sanger founded one of the companies that was a leader in it, Terminus. And you're going to find most companies run ABM in some form if they have a certain annual contract value, ACV. So there's different ways to run it. So, but that, it could be outbound, it could be any motion. If it doesn't make sense for your organization, if it's not cost effective for acquisition and your CAC is too high or things like, you may have to go back to your investment mapping and make new decisions. So this isn't like one of those, it always goes forward. There's a lot of areas you have to go back and research. That leads into our pipeline velocity. And this is that sales process, sales motion that you're trying to get them through the pipe and get them to sale. Then, once I've sold you, we need to make sure we get you the value you expect as quickly as we can. If I've got a 1-year contract and you don't see value till 9 months, guess what? You're not renewing. So those things are really important and not often thought about. Then we've got customer expansion. Obviously, it's a lower cost associated with selling somebody who is already a customer. But not only that, it's a lot easier to help them, actually show them more value, help them get more out of what they've purchased from you. And you know what? You become a trusted advisor because you actually care about the outcomes.
Is customer expansion where customer advocacy, customer marketing comes in?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So customer success also, that customer expansion can also be account management, things along those lines. That can come time to value. A lot of people don't believe that customer success should sell or should carry a quota. Now, I don't think you need to incentivize them that way. I don't think you have to say you must. But if you're doing your job well, you're going to help them see other products that can bring them value. It'll happen naturally. Account managers could sell it. Your AEs can sell it. However you're structured, that can work. But really, if you do it right, they trust you, they work with you, they want you to be a part of what they're doing so they can be successful with it. Nobody makes a purchase thinking, oh, I hope this doesn't work out. They want to see success. And unfortunately, I think that the vast majority of people go in without an actual plan of how to make that piece of software or whatever you've purchased work and bring the value you want. So hopefully customer success can get in there and help do it. So I'm really huge on customer success and the expansion of it, the growth of it, the leadership of it right now.
And just to go back to the point you made about should they own revenue, right, and be incentivized by revenue? It's a really good question. I see both sides to that story. I see where you want them to be incentivized and they should have the same opportunities as sales teams, and of course those incentives will help them to push things forward. But at the same time, you want the purity of that relationship that's being built with the customer for reasons that are not commercial and not monetizable. I spoke to a CS leader earlier today, actually, who was saying that their team has it split, right, where each CSM is tethered to an account executive, and they together have a quota goal, which I thought was an interesting approach too.
And there's a lot of people trying to solve that problem right now, because a lot of people think that if our goal with your activity is to produce more revenue, how do we incentivize you to do so? And this one's a hard one because the role inherently is not supposed to be a revenue generating role, but a success, kind of value, customer relationship type of role. So it's really interesting. And this is when, to me, business is really fun, when these new things come out and we get to try to test new things and see how they work and see the evolution of them. So it's going to be a fun time for CS for sure. And so once you get through the expansion piece, like, well, how do I figure out what's really going on with my org? We've always heard the adage, the old stuff like sales and marketing don't get along. CS doesn't have a seat at the table, so on and so forth. Well, the data tells whatever story we want it to. So if I have sales ops, mark ops, CS ops, and everybody comes to the table with their data, guess what? We're going to have 3 different stories. So one of the biggest components that we are telling people is your RevOps. It's having a decentralized group that is responsible for insights so that when they come to the table, there is no bias. That bias is what kills companies all day long, right? If sales owns RevOps, guess what story it's going to tell? And it should, because that's what it needs to do. So when you unhook it from any of those business operational units, you get a better outcome. And so where we've seen this is really successful is attaching to like a COO, a CFO, even a CEO, where they have a seat at the table and they're there to literally provide the insights necessary for people to plan and strategize.
Interesting. So they're Switzerland. They're the arbiter. And do you ever see them reporting to the CRO?
We do, but once again, it's like that's really reporting to sales most of the time. There are CROs who have both, which might be a little bit easier, but most CROs, and this has been my experience, others may have other, most CROs come from sales. I definitely know some that have come from marketing or other functions, but the vast majority of the time they're coming for sales. So they have that mindset. So that's why decentralizing it makes it a much better function and necessity. And then really the final is what we call leadership and management. That could be visualization. That can be meeting cadences. That can be anything related to your people. Because like I said, without the people, none of this works. That can even be down to your project management to make sure that all these things move in a cohesive way. And we actually have a framework we call CAT, which is clarity, alignment, team. It's creating the clarity around the problems and how we're going to fix them, the alignment on what's going to happen and who's involved, and dissemination of all that information so that every team member understands the action they're taking and how that action actually translates to the bigger business objective. When you do that, the company just functions better because everybody understands they're part of a bigger team, and that if their part fails, if it doesn't work, if they don't do their job, everybody else suffers. So
yeah,
that's our framework.
Eight pillars. We'll go through them very quickly. I want to play back to you what I heard.
Yep.
Well, let me go through them now, and then and then I want to follow up with for you. So we've got total relevant market. Identify the best performing segment for you relevant to your product. Market investment map. Identify the highest value areas for you to be investing in by product type, by your different go-to-market motions. What am I missing on that one?
Geos, everything.
By geos, right, et cetera. Brand and demand, your strategy around how you're talking to your customer, and obviously harvesting demand and generating demand. Pipeline velocity, making sure that you're feeding your sales at the right pace to hit your goals. Customer time to value, that's onboarding, that's training your customers, that's continuous value delivery, that's customer success. Customer expansion as a segue from that is, you've made that customer successful. Now let's land and expand. Let's increase the size of that account. Revenue operations is an independent arbiter. That is an arbiter. Maybe there's a connotation there that there's some kind of war going on, but it's an independent reviewer of the metrics and what are all the analytics from pre-sales, sales, post-sales and how do we make sense of those? And then leadership and management, making sure that the leadership really has the right motivations and is setting the team up successfully. Okay, so those are the 8 pillars of your GTM framework. Cool. Like, what do I do with that? I'm sure I can hire you as a consultant, your team, to do a wonderful job helping me to institute that. But let's say now for a second that I want to give something a shot on my own first. What am I doing with this information?
I mean, first you've got to organize around it, right? So thinking through this as, do all of these pieces exist in our current go-to-market, and how do they exist? You can say, I know what my ICP is. Well, go in a little deeper there and making sure that you truly understand it to a level that you can sell to it and that it is the right buyer changes the entire game. We have people who are like, oh, we've got an ICP, and you get in and you go, really, and you're wondering why you're selling to everybody and why you have high churn. So one of the things that people don't seem to realize is everything, it's not a sales problem, a marketing problem, or a CS problem. It is a go-to market problem. If sales isn't working right, if you're not closing enough deals, if your pipeline's not full, people go, it's a sales problem. Well, we need to take a step back and go back into the entire process to see what's breaking. Because a lot of times it's not sales problem, right? They could be targeting the wrong ICP and therefore they can't get pipe going. They can't close deals. Well, did we define the right ICP? Are we attracting the right ICP? Is marketing to the right ICP? And so on. So really use it as a way to dissect your problem. Start back at the front, make sure all the pieces are right, that they're aligned properly, and then come back through. That is how I would use it if you're not engaged with us, to really assess what's going on in your organization and figure out how to fix it.
Judd Borkaove, my second favorite Judd after
Yes.
Judd. Ahead of Ashley Judd and Judd Apatow.
Yeah. I get you.
Thank you so much. Learned a lot on this episode and really appreciate your time.
Amen. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.